Welcome to the Let's Talk Crypto podcast, where we discuss the latest Bitcoin, blockchain, and digital asset news.
Hey everybody, hope you're all well. This is episode 18 of Let's Talk Crypto. It's the 21st of July 2019, and the recording that we're about to play for you was recorded on Friday the 19th of July. I'm your host, Wes Carlson, and today I'll be chatting to Omar. We discuss the teething pains of getting involved in Bitcoin and the crypto space. We also touch on Bitcoin's long-term viability, and we discuss the Libra project and hearings that we've witnessed over the last week with the US Congress and financial committees. We kept things light and informal. I hope you enjoy this episode. If you do, please like and share, and don't forget to subscribe. Also, please click on the bell button so that you get reminded when new episodes are released. If you're listening to this on iTunes, please give us a review. It will help us get noticed and will help get Bitcoin to the top. Without any further ado, let's get going. Hey Omar, how are you?
I'm doing good, Wes. How are you doing?
Yeah, not too bad. Been a bit of a long week. I'm glad it's the weekend. Thirsty Friday, or thank God it's Friday, they say, TGIF. It's been an incredible amount of Facebook on TV doing hearings for this new Libra project. And like you, I think I'm also sick and tired of hearing about Facebook. You know, even just leading into this, all the articles and all the tweets on Twitter, everything's been about Facebook. But we'll talk a little bit about that later. What I wanted to bring up before we go any further is new people entering the space and how easy it is to forget what it was like when perhaps we first entered the space. And I'd like to tell you a bit of a story or give you my thoughts on a particular person that a good friend of mine, actually, that I've known for many years, longer than 10 years. I'm not going to try and calculate now exactly how long. And I think that what's happened here is a good example of what probably happens to a lot of other people too. I have been into cryptocurrency or Bitcoin since, let's just say 2012, late 2012, early beginning 2013. And over the years, as you know, the Bitcoin price goes through its little bubbles, and you've got people pouring into the space, and you know there's a lot of hype and FOMO, and then the price blows off at the top and it crashes, and there's a lot of depression, and they call it crypto winter, and rinse and repeat. You know, that happens over and over again, and each time there's a whole barrage of people that get interested in crypto, obviously, and leading up into the price surge, and when price is starting to move upwards, you get a lot of people asking, should I buy crypto now? Should I buy Bitcoin now? Is now the right time to get to Bitcoin? And they're contacting me on my phone. They're sending me WhatsApp messages. Anybody that knows that you're into Bitcoin is starting to contact you and ask, is now the right time to buy? Is now the right time to buy? And over the years, generally have crafted a pretty generic message back saying, you know, the right time was yesterday, and the next best time, like that famous quote, is right now. I think if you have a long enough time horizon, it's worth risking a small percentage, and this is not financial advice, but I emphasize small percentage, enough that you're willing to lose, invested into Bitcoin. And what I tend to find is as the price is going up, people are asking, is it time to buy? Oh, I'll wait for it to come back down, then I'll buy. And then it doesn't come back down. Then you're going to say, oh, it's still going up. I didn't manage to buy. It didn't come down. Now should I buy? And it goes and it goes and it keeps rising. The price keeps rising, and you're getting these messages. Until finally they buy. But where do they buy? Right near the top. And then it crashes. And then you get the messages again. Oh, what's happened to Bitcoin? Is something wrong? Why is it crashing? What's going on? Every time I buy, Bitcoin price goes down. And this seems to repeat itself quite a lot. It's obviously the human emotion, the cycle, the market cycle of greed and fear. And again, today was a prime example of, this particular individual, a very good friend of mine, contacting me and saying, I want to buy some more Bitcoin. So I said, good, that's great, good for you. Good. Buy it then. And after yesterday's $1,000 200 price increase in literally 10 minutes, I'm sure there's a lot of people who felt the same today. Woke up and thought, wow, it's going back up again. I'm going to buy. And hence I got that message. And so I said, good, that's great for you. Buy then. No sooner did he go and buy, did the price crash by $500. And I got the message again. Oh, every time I buy Bitcoin, it crashes. So I think the moral of the story here is what I'm trying to get at is if people are going to put a little bit of money into Bitcoin, a small percentage, emphasize again, small percentage, nothing that you need to survive on or that you need to feed your family with, they need to look at it more with a long time horizon and not the little movements that happen hour to hour, day to day. Because if one zooms out, you'll see the trajectory is upwards. And whether you bought it at 10,500 or 10,800 is not going to make a difference when it's sitting at $100,000. Just as an example, I'm not saying it's going to 100,000 when it's sitting at $100,000 one day. Have you experienced that with friends, family, or just acquaintances that they tend to contact you or show a much stronger interest in buying or the space when the price is increasing?
Yes. Let me try to explain this from
No problem.
From my perspective, my introduction to crypto. I got into it a lot later than you did. I, in fact, really kind of got into it in the second half of 2017. And when I first got into crypto, it was sort of by like accident, maybe I can say, because I was just watching, I think I told you, a video on Facebook about getting paid by posting on social media. And the ad was about Steam, the blockchain based social media network where you blog and you get paid in cryptocurrency.
Yeah, I do know.
So I was curious, and I happened to get on there, and then I learned how to, you do your blog and then you get paid, and I earned some Litecoin, and not that much. And then I earned some Ether, and then I learned how to use a wallet. And then all this crypto stuff was never challenging in terms of like, yeah, it's technical, but I have a technical background from before, so it wasn't really difficult for me to understand what these things were and how to use basic wallets and how to properly manage your security and passwords, etc. It was not like challenging, but it was interesting. And then I started writing about cryptocurrencies, and I've been writing since December 2017. What I've seen is, in the beginning, I didn't even understand the value. Technically, maybe I understood it, but I didn't understand the value of Bitcoin. So in the beginning, when I earned some Bitcoin, because I was being paid in Bitcoin, I sold my Bitcoin for fiat a few times. But then I gradually realized that this thing actually will hold value, long-term value, and it'll appreciate over time. You can't be impatient and try to look at prices constantly and make decisions based on short-term changes in price. So the more I got into Bitcoin, and the more I wrote about it, the more I studied it and researched other cryptocurrencies, I realized this is like an industry that 99 or more percent of the world's population is completely unaware of. They don't understand how these technologies are going to evolve and eventually take over and replace many of the legacy systems that are out there. So starting from Bitcoin as a means of value transfer, many people still think short term, and they don't want to hold Bitcoin. They don't want to invest in cryptocurrencies because they think, oh, look, the price is going down. Yes, it's going down like maybe the time you're looking at it, but have you checked the price of Bitcoin when it was worth nothing, when it was worth $0? So this thing has gone from being worth zero to now being worth over $10,000. So if you were saying, you need to zoom out and look at things from you need to have perspective, basically. So anyone trying to invest, I would agree that you don't dump your life savings into it, so that you are not able to pay your bills or make a living, or like cover your basic expenses.
Yeah,
But at least you can afford to invest reasonably,
yeah,
some amount.
exactly. And saying that, not to put too much into something, it's just good money management, risk aversion. You wouldn't put all your
Yes.
eggs in one basket. It applies to anything. If you keep some cash, you keep some gold, you keep some Bitcoin. I'm not saying those are the things you should do, but you spread your risk a bit, and any good money manager will tell you that to be risk adverse. I think that makes total sense. And what you added there about the way you discovered Bitcoin is very interesting, because notice one thing in my opening comments about new people entering the space, and obviously most of them are brought in due to price increases and hearing, oh, this person made a lot of money, or this person's a millionaire now, has 10,000 Bitcoins, or whatever it may be. A lot of them are brought in through that speculation. And whether we like it or not, right now, Bitcoin is probably 99% a speculative asset. That's all it really is at the moment. I mean, I think that's what its main use is right now, is for speculating on price. That's about it. And a lot of people are coming to space purely for that and haven't done any further research, and are literally there just to accumulate. But then also, the minute it doesn't go the right way, they're ready to dump. And I'd like to call those almost like weak hands. It's only when you fully grasp the value of it and what it means and what a paradigm shift it could be. What I found is that people then, once they get that, tend to understand the mentality of perhaps hoarding a bit of it just in case, and not being so quick to throw it away if the price drops by a couple $100. And I think that for the time being, and especially in this last little run-up that we've had here, I think we might have accumulated a lot of people like that, because it's been quite a sharp increase, that if we had to drop below a certain level, I think we would have a bit of a panic on our hands. But I suppose it's different from person to person. But I think that as a community, one of the ways to help new people in the space out there is education. We need to get more information out there. And I think that one of the easiest and quickest ways for people to learn is via Bitcoin, because it is such a big brand, and because there is so much material out there that can be shared.
We all have access to the internet. You have access, and we all have devices, and we all have our ways of obtaining information. But how we analyze that information, how we interpret it, and how we apply it depends a lot on our personal, educational, and professional background. I wrote an article a while back about why most educated people fail to understand Bitcoin. That's, in my opinion, that's because you have economics, you have technology, you have computer science concepts, you have business concepts, you have concepts from like all these different disciplines, and they all kind of come together and they create the Bitcoin currency, protocol, and software. So many things that Bitcoin involves. It's consists of so many different things. So to be able to really understand how it works, it takes a special kind of person who understands how all these different disciplines work. That person might not be a master in all these things. They might not be a master programmer or economist, but they would have a pretty good conceptual understanding of how fiat currency financial system has worked, or rather has failed, and how technology has been used to create something that's arguably better. So it's not something that everyone can understand so easily. But once But once Bitcoin starts being used the right way, instead of for speculation, it's actually being used as part of a business that accepts Bitcoin. More merchants accepting it, more people using it to make payments for normal everyday things like coffee, or understanding how to use it. The more practical uses, as practical uses for Bitcoin and other cryptocurrencies increase, we're going to see a more healthy uh, and greater adoption level, and that's when the prices will really start to go up. Because right now we see all these price swings and all this volatility is probably because all these exchanges are filled with traders who are pushing that button and trading and just trading because they're speculating right now, I think.
Well, absolutely. I mean, on the exchanges, the traders will be pushing the price around, and that is mainly due to illiquidity. In an illiquid market, it only takes a small amount of money to move price, and that's basically what's happening at the moment. And I actually have a theory that since the CME's futures exchange opened and the CBOEs last year, that a lot more professional quant firms have entered the space, and they have deep pockets and they are able to move and not manipulate, because I think that's the wrong word. I think they're able to move price the direction that they want to when they want to, and have brought a lot of their techniques from the traditional space to crypto. Because let's not forget, more and more firms have opened up on the traditional space and they're all competing there. Whereas if you come into the crypto space, there's much less professional trade shops that they have to compete against. So they're able to employ the same techniques here without any friction like they would have in traditional markets. And I mean friction in terms of competition from their fellow sort of trade shops, and I mean friction from regulators. So there's a lot of underhanded practices and sort of techniques that would be frowned upon, if not downright illegal, in the traditional space that are being used in the cryptocurrency space on certain exchanges. And that does lead to the type of price volatility that you see. That combined with the fact that it's very illiquid, although Bitcoin is a much more liquid, has great liquidity compared to the rest of the crypto space. It really is just a drop in the bucket when you compare it to big futures exchanges and traditional stock exchanges of that in the US, for example. Compared to the forex markets, it's not even a drop. It's more like an atom as opposed to an apple. So yeah. And the thing is, though, you say that with all that utility and businesses and using Bitcoin and as it's intended, as a means of exchange and a method of payment, and not just a means of speculation or store of value, it should see the price go up. But it's sort of like a catch-22, that because the price goes up, then more people want to buy it, and so the price goes more up, and that in itself is volatility. The price increasing is volatility. Today 1 Bitcoin can buy you a car, tomorrow it can buy you a house. What do? You don't spend your Bitcoin, you go get more Bitcoin. And I think that might be a self-fulfilling prophecy or a feedback loop that you'll end up with. So it'll be interesting to see when we get to that stage when Bitcoin is used more widely and is adopted, to see how it works. I think that by mere fact of Bitcoin becoming more of a standard or as a means of settlement, I think that with much deeper liquidity than just the average purchase of coffee or something like that, I think that's how you get the price to become more stable and flatten out in terms of the volatility. But I still think we're very, very far away from that. I think we're still very much in the early stages.
Well, people just don't understand. If I gave you right now, if we were sitting together and I gave you a $20 bill, a physical $20 bill, you were holding it in your hand, you would know how much exactly that is, because it's an even number, it's 20, and you're physically holding it and you're familiar with that. Whereas if I give you $20 in Bitcoin and it's like point zeros or whatever, and it's like some number that goes into your wallet that you're looking at on a computer, that, and then you look at the address that I send it to, the address is so long,
It's very
numbers
abstract,
and
isn't
letters.
it? Very abstract.
And right, and when I was first introduced to it, there was like almost I didn't have any problem understanding how this all was coming together, but that's because I had been to school for computer science, and I had always been and I had been an application developer, and I had been good at math all my life and all these technical things. But for the average person who may not be so inclined to looking at things in a technical way, like my mother, for example, she's a physician. She's a pretty good doctor, but when it comes to understanding math and things like that, she's not too interested in that, and it doesn't really appeal to her. So it takes a special kind of person, technical person, to understand it. So when you're not technical, you kind of need to be, you need kind of need someone to hold your hand and tell you how to use, how to understand the basics and use it. And you need a bit of extra help. Like I helped a guy; it literally took me hours to explain to him how to receive payment in his wallet, and then how he could take those funds and send them to someone else in case he needed to make a payment. So we need like easier ways to onboard people, and we need to make the applications and the interface a lot more user friendly. And so the technology needs to be improved so that more people feel comfortable using it.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Definitely need to make it a lot easier to onboard people. It already has, to be fair, improved leaps and bounds since I first got involved. I must tell you, it was very scary sending my first Bitcoin over the Bitcoin network. I bought my first Bitcoin, I can't remember where I bought it from, but I do remember the first time I sent a Bitcoin, and that was when Bitcoin was about $200, I think, $250. I sent a Bitcoin to someone, and it was nerve-wracking. It was the first time I sent a Bitcoin. And as much as I sort of understood, I had done my research. I tend to be like that. If I'm really interested in something, I probably go a little bit overboard and research everything I can about it. And still, I was nervous to send that Bitcoin. I had double checked, triple checked, quadruple checked everything I was doing. And that's when Bitcoin was worth $250. Now, back then, I was actually just using Bitcoin Core, the actual client on my computer. I had a full node, and it was just the way you did things. I didn't use any other wallet. I didn't even know about any other wallets. I can't even remember what wallets they were. I remember when they got some of these web-based wallets and that. But in any event, you had to download the Bitcoin Core wallet, which took a bit of time, a lot quicker than now. But it still took a lot of time, and it had to validate all the blocks, and you had to make sure you had an internet connection to make sure all the blocks were up to date. And it was quite a clunky interface. In fact, it still is a bit of a clunky interface, but it was a clunky interface, and it was desktop based. It wasn't on your mobile phone, and it just wasn't great to use as a user experience. It was kind of like Windows, like 3.1, I think the one before Windows 95. It was terrible. And now if you look today, there are hundreds, if not thousands of Bitcoin wallets, and from your mobile phone, and they're so easy, and you don't have to do anything, and that just remembers everything for you, and you can back up your seeds so easily, and you didn't have any of that back then. So in a way, it has come along a long way, and although it might still look complicated now, it's definitely improved. Definitely not a stagnant thing. It's improving.
Correct. And a lot of people also want to assume things, which is bad. For example, right now we have Bitcoin. And on social media, there was someone arguing with me about, okay, so by the time 2040 rolls around, which is in another about 20 years from now, they were arguing that everybody's going to be using Bitcoin by the time 2040 comes. Now, what I said was, the rate at which technology is advancing, it's quite likely we'll probably have something better than Bitcoin by 2040. Well, then he said, do you realize how long it took for something like Bitcoin to for us to come up with Bitcoin, because we had all this fiat money for such a long time. Then my response to that was the rate at which information is growing and the rate at which technology is advancing is exponential. It's advancing at an exponential rate. So 20 years of it, in a 20 years at this rate, at a rate that even the rate itself is increasing, the rate of innovation. 20 years from now will be like over 200 years of innovation. That in the next 20 years, we're going to move to 100 years ahead if we compare it to how fast we were making progress, maybe from 1500 to 1700. If you look in history, right, if you look at all the different inventions from 1500 to 1700, there weren't as many advancements as if you would compare from 1980 maybe to right now, 1980 to 2020. So many things have been invented. So from 2020 to 2040, we're like moving at such a fast pace, and the pace is only going to get faster, in my opinion. And there's a pretty good chance we're going to have something better than Bitcoin.
Yeah, I mean, nobody knows the future. And whilst I still believe that Bitcoin is the one for now, I'm open to something better coming along and having superior technology, superior concept, superior game theory, whatever it may be. But I just haven't seen it yet.
Right. We don't know.
If that thing does come, yeah, we can't say. And if anybody who says that it just can't happen or won't happen is fooling themselves and is doing themselves a disservice, and probably just not being honest with themselves, because you've got to be open to the fact that something better can always come along. Otherwise, we wouldn't have got Bitcoin anyway.
Right.
So, yeah, that's my theory. And but for the time being, I do think it is the best that we currently have in its current form, and looking at what the current options are. Could it be better? Yes. Could be vastly better by leaps and bounds. Could one of the existing technologies, maybe another crypto, usurp it? Yes, absolutely. We don't know, because all these things are iterating all the time. But in its current form, with everything else as it is, my opinion is that it is the best option out there for the time being. And happy to review that if something else comes along or if something changes. Another thing that it brings to mind in terms of new people coming to the space is I wonder if that is true for the other cryptocurrencies at present. And as much as we don't like to admit it sometimes, the barometer of interest can sometimes be as simple as just looking at these market caps and their values as a percentage or Bitcoin dominance as a percentage of the Bitcoin sort of market cap. And although these things are pushed around by traders and stuff like that, I just wonder, with the rise in Bitcoin's dominance the way it has been over the last month or 2 months, I presume, if that is a sign of either A, people are starting to get interested in Bitcoin again, but not as much this time around in the altcoins, or B, are people in the altcoins moving back into Bitcoin because they're seeing all the attention it's getting in media, or because of its parabolic rise at the moment. And I can't really pin down what I think about that. I think I am leaning more towards it's traders doing their things, but there has to be some sort of organic buying or selling too. Not everything is just traders pushing things around.
I don't have opinions on these things, and I try not to think about these kinds of things personally.
Is that because you don't really follow the price that much?
I get No, I can't say that I don't follow the price, because I'm a reporter and writer, and I have you're kind of looking at the price all the time
Okay.
almost. But I try not when I look at a price, I try not to make any judgments or any assumptions or any predictions based on the price. But one thing maybe we can say is, do you remember what the price was in January 2017 for Bitcoin?
Yes, I do.
What was it?
It ranged between about 900 and about $1,000. It was just over 1,000, I think.
Yeah, and if we think about it, we're in 2017 and 19. That's like 2 years.
Yep.
That's like about 2 years from where we are right now. And could you even think of Bitcoin dropping to 1,000 right now? It seems highly improbable at this point that Bitcoin would drop to 1,000. And in January 2017, it was probably highly improbable that Bitcoin would drop to $100, right? I mean, it was like you would be willing to.
Yeah, I mean, using probabilistic models and standard deviations and that, I would say you're 100% correct. It was very slim chance of it happening, put it that way. The percentage chance of it happening would be very, very, very low. Something like 5% chance or something.
Right,
Or
perhaps
less.
lower. And in life, there is nothing 100%. When you board a plane, there is some probability the plane will crash, right? But it's so low, or it's at a level where you feel comfortable enough to jump on the plane. Even if you drive a car, each time you put the car, each time you drive and you're on the road, there is a chance you could be in some kind of accident and you could die. There is, right? And or there's a chance every day you wake up, there's a probability that you will die that day. So we live in a world of probabilities, and there's nothing 100%. But where we're standing right now, it would be highly unlikely, uh, in terms of probability, that the Bitcoin price would drop to 1,000. Now, the price was 1,000 about 2 years ago. So think another 2 years from now, and then another 2 years from now, and you keep on going, assuming Bitcoin stays relevant. We will probably be at a price level that is significantly higher than what it is right now, in my opinion.
Yeah, well, I mean, there's a good chance based on the capped supply and increasing demand that we end up a lot higher than we are now, with that caveat that you mentioned, assuming that Bitcoin remains relevant. That is the key. And one of the things that would perhaps be a speed bump in the road would be something like the US banning Bitcoin or something like that. And I say speed bump because I don't think that it would be the death blow or anything like that, but it certainly would be a little bit of a setback. And then Bitcoin would probably continue on and be used outside of the mainstream. Regardless, it would be used. Not all countries would follow suit. Recently on, I think it's CNBC, they asked I think it was a representative, one of the US representatives, about Bitcoin, and they were actually specifically talking about your favorite thing, Libra.
Yeah.
And he brought up Bitcoin in comparison, and I found it quite interesting what he had to say. Let me just play it for you quickly. Just listen to this little soundbite.
The question, though, long term, do you think that regulators and politicians like yourself will allow the emergence and the sort of these new types of currencies if they don't look a lot like the regulations and guardrails that we currently have around fiat currency and money?
Well, I think there's no capacity to kill Bitcoin. Even the Chinese, with their firewall and their extreme intervention in their society, could not kill Bitcoin.
What I found most interesting is that was a congressman answering a news anchor on CNBC. And he answered the news anchor by saying, basically, Libra and these other type of projects are not Bitcoin. And he basically also is saying Bitcoin really is distributed and open and everything, and it's sort of unstoppable. It's a US government official. It's a congressman. He is speaking in a positive manner about something like Bitcoin. And let me put it this way, that you would have never heard that 5 years ago on TV. That was an incredible thing to hear from a US representative.
Yeah, I mean, as we move forward, one thing that we need to emphasize is Bitcoin is open source and Bitcoin is decentralized, which makes it uncensorable. It's basically unconfiscatable, uncensorable money. It's hard money is what it is. And it's difficult to understand how it's hard money and how it's uncensorable because we're so used to working in a centralized type world where companies are centralized, where companies, if I want to shut down Facebook, it might be a bit challenging because it's so huge of a company, but it would be quite easy to get to identify who the main people are and where they're and the servers that they have, and kind of just once we've identified them, the authorities would go ahead and begin the shutdown process. Whereas with Bitcoin, with us,
I mean, can you imagine if the government wants, or anybody, a bad actor of sort wants something from Facebook, whether it be somebody's password or somebody's personal information, their data, whatever it means. You just have to go up to a family member of Mark Zuckerberg, put a gun to their head, and you'll get everything you need. So you can't exactly do that with Bitcoin.
You can't. And then to better understand open source protocols, even within cryptocurrency, for example, somebody was arguing with me that Binance and Binance Coin will become more powerful and more influential and more prominent than Ethereum. And I said, no, that's not going to happen because Binance is an exchange and it is centralized because they have a company, they have employees, and they have a couple of things they have a number of things they do. Binance Research, Binance Labs for incubator projects, Binance the trading platform, Binance Chain to launch new token projects. Whereas Ethereum is a completely open source protocol that anybody in their world can use, and it's being used to do so many different things by so many different companies and people that Ethereum is going to grow exponentially, whereas Binance will probably grow in a linear fashion. So you cannot compare Binance to Ethereum because one is centralized and the other one is completely decentralized. If I wanted to borrow the Ethereum protocol and start my own company where I am right now in Pakistan, there's nothing stopping me. It's a permissionless network. So people still don't understand how a permissionless, open, and decentralized and open source protocol can be.
That permissionless term is so important. So important. I think it's underestimated at times because permissionless in the sense of, as a user, you can download a wallet, you can transact. There's no need for you to ask permission from anybody. You don't need to KYC yourself. You don't need to do anything. All I need to do is download a wallet. I can give you a call, ask you to send me a Bitcoin or an Ethereum, and you can send it to me. And no other party has to be involved in that transaction. Permissionless in the sense of the developer comes up with a brilliant idea, decides that he's going to use Bitcoin to solve global warming, whatever it is, to build this app. He doesn't need to go and ask for permission or approval from anybody. as long as he's using the features which are currently installed on the Ethereum network or on the Bitcoin blockchain, he can build an app that does whatever great idea he's come up with, and he can put it out there, and people can use that app without permission from the Ethereum Foundation, blockchain, or anything, without permission from the Bitcoin blockchain or any of the other users for that matter. And I think that is one of the aspects that I just don't get about the Facebook Libra project. Even if they are going to be a separate organization, I don't see how, on one hand, David Marcus is sitting in front of the US officials and saying, we won't launch this thing until we've ticked all the boxes, until we've got all your KYC and AML concerns dealt with. We won't launch it unless you guys give us the green light. We won't launch it unless everything that you want to be done from a legal perspective, from a practical, technical perspective, is implemented in this blockchain. So at the same time, they claim that they're going to transition to a permissionless system and other developers are going to build on it. How on earth are they going to, on the one hand, appease the need to abide by what the regulators and what the SEC wants or what FINRA wants and all these different organizations, and yet at the same time offer the permissionless features of the Bitcoin blockchain, for example? It's almost like cognitive dissonance. I can't hold the two in my mind at the same time. Am I missing something?
I think it's a guessing game. There's so many people analyzing and making predictions and talking about this scenario or that scenario. I just don't think there's anybody who can accurately predict or determine anything that's going on in this space.
But we try. But we try.
In most cases, they have been so wrong or so off. So I don't listen to anybody when they're making predictions. All I do is assess the amount of risk involved in any type of situation and make my moves or make my decisions based on the level of risk that is involved. Now, what I want to just quickly, before I forget this point, it might not be completely related to what we're talking about right now, but I just want to make this point, is that for people that are looking to gain exposure to cryptocurrencies, one way they can gain exposure, like I do in my case, is, for example, I'm working on a small project and I complete a certain type of task for some client. Instead of accepting payment in fiat money, I will send them my Bitcoin address and accept a payment of maybe $200, $300 in Bitcoin. So I'm gaining exposure to Bitcoin and I'm not buying it either. So if I did some kind of work and I got Bitcoin for it, it can go up or down, but I can at least live with the loss if it does go down. You see what I'm saying?
Absolutely. Ultimately, the best way, I think, to get your hands on Bitcoin is to actually earn it, to trade your time or effort for Bitcoin, because then that's actually what it's intended for, is to be used as a money, as a form of value. You're no longer speculating on it in terms of against a US dollar or something like that. And maybe we'll get to a time one day when we're not quoting what a Bitcoin is worth in dollars anymore. You certainly don't do it with the US dollar. You don't say, I've got $1 US that is worth, well, it's worth $1 US. You know, you don't, unless you're going to another country and you need the fiat of that country, a dollar is a dollar. And that's why you'll find a lot of people who are in the Bitcoin space will always jokingly say one Bitcoin before the crash was worth one Bitcoin, and one Bitcoin after the crash was still worth one Bitcoin. It's not very helpful now, but you never know. There might be a time in the future, whatever crypto it is, if it's not Bitcoin, they won't be measured against something like the US dollar. And if history is anything to go on, fiat currencies don't have an infinite lifespan. That time will inevitably come. It's just, what will be the new standard? If it's not the dollar as a global reserve, what will it be? Will it be gold? Will it be Bitcoin or something else? Statistically, it's inevitable that the time will come when we won't be using the dollar anymore.